Thanks for watching the video. This is Pascal for EMP Reviews. As a way to honor the memory of Carl Weathers, I thought I'd review the only episode of The Mandalorian that I enjoy. The return of Luke at the end of this season was phenomenal, but I didn't enjoy the rest of its boring story, as well as the other episodes I bothered to watch. Ironically, even before I could get started on the script for this analysis, a coincidental bombshell announcement by Gina Carano hit the news. Perfect. As I do with many of my videos, the beginning will be a recap of the story, and the review will start at the time posted here. The Mandalorian returns to planet Nevarro with Grogu. Meanwhile, Marshal Cara Dune dishes out some justice on several Aqualish criminals and takes their money. As Greef Karga's agent, this was another step in attempting to make this trading post a respectable, lawful environment. Mando meets Karga and Dune. They drop off Grogu in a class for a safe place for the duration of this visit, that is to get his ship repaired, and eventually meet Mithril, Mando's very first bounty in this series. He is now working off his debt to Karga. The officers ask Mando for help in taking care of an old Imperial base. In a previous episode, troops commanded by Moff Gideon came from those headquarters. Karga is afraid that the weaponry there could end up on the black market. Eradicating this station would be another major step in cleaning Nevarro and its reputation. He agrees. Karga and Dune's plan is to overload the base's central reactor and leave before the resulting explosion. They infiltrate the installation, incapacitate one of the security guards, and grab his code cylinder. Once at the reactor, Karga orders Mithril to sabotage its cooling process, enabling the hot lava to begin damaging the station. The alarms are activated, and while attempting to leave, the group discovers that the facility is actually a lab. Deformed bodies floating in fluid are housed in a room they encounter. Mithril finds digital footage of Dr. Penn Pershing. As it is a recent recording, one of Pershing's statements confirms that Gideon is still alive. He also described experiments involving blood transfusions, plasma taken from Grogu. After eradicating some stormtroopers, they split, with Mando deciding to get to Grogu. Under covering fire from Karga and Mithril, Cara Dune activates the Tretzler Marauder they noticed on their way in and uses it to take the trio away from the location. Speeders give chase, but their efforts are fruitless. The base begins to explode while TIE Fighter now attack the trio. The Razor Crest joins the fight, rescuing them, and afterwards, Karga and Mando say their goodbyes. Karga gives an inaccurate report of his connection with the explosion of the base to Rebel Officer Carson Teva, dramatically reducing his involvement. Afterwards, Teva's invitation to Cara to join the force is politely refused. He bonds with her about the losses suffered during Alderaan and leaves a rebel badge for her before leaving. On an Imperial cruiser, and alive and well, Moff Gideon is informed that a tracker has been hidden inside the Razor Crest, as well as the fact that the Mandalorian still has Grogu. To be honest, I'm surprised that I came across this episode considering the fact that I stopped watching the show after the very second episode. I was immediately turned off on how vulnerable the Mandalorian is when dealing with the Jawas, for example, and when having to struggle with how boring the show is and how short the episodes are. I am very glad that these days television seasons and streaming series have a shorter number of episodes than the usual 20 plus entries that is a standard for network TV, but episodes that are barely a half hour prevent me from taking them seriously. To me, it means either the productions have an unforgiving budget or that the writers and producers don't have enough talent to create episodes lasting at least 50 minutes of narratives. The opening scene of this specific episode has the Mandalorian trying to get Grogu to connect some wires to a proper electronic board. This prologue went on a bit too long and reminded me of Rocket Raccoon giving instructions to Baby Groot in the second Guardians of the Galaxy film near the end. It deserved to be reduced in time and was not as comical as it tried to be. I don't know why the hell the producers decided to destroy the Razor Crest in Chapter 14, 2 episodes after this one. As little as I watched the show, I still know it essentially was the series' version of the Millennium Falcon. It was a major part of the narrative and was selling pretty damn well on the collector's market, right alongside dolls of Grogu. The scene where Mando saves the day with this spacecraft is what concludes this episode's battle scenes. It's a perfect event in the story and is a great act of Deus Ex Machina. Maybe I'm a bit anal, but I just can't suspend disbelief with these puppets. I think my acceptance basically ended with Yoda in The Empire Strikes Back and hit its lowest point with Babu Frick in The Rise of Skywalker. In The Mandalorian, Karga saying hello to and carrying Grogu just felt dumb. Unbelievable. As much as there is love for Farscape, and I totally support the cult following for the franchise, one of the several reasons I never got into the show is the puppets. I can't get past them. I am, however, almost completely sold with characters in The Dark Crystal and the Netflix masterpiece The Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. During that show's story, I actually forgot at some point, due to the brilliance of the plot, that I was watching a cast of operated dolls. Incidentally, I love this shot. This is the teacher in the classroom Grogu is left in during the majority of this episode. The imagery reminds me of a similar one displaying an additional C-3PO doppelganger and the technical screen behind it in The Empire Strikes Back. Thank goodness that after watching this show again, I can say that Carl Weathers has a great performance here, undoubtedly the best in the cast, and I also give Horatio Sanz praise for his work as Mithril. I am sorry to say, however, that Gina Carano's performance is wooden and most of her words feel like rehearsed lines. But if I learned anything from the Star Wars prequels, is that great actors like Terrence Stamp, Jimmy Smits, Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor are completely flat in their delivery, and that is only because of directing failures by George Lucas. I thoroughly admire Mrs. Carano for being the incredibly strong person that she is, inside and out, but there was just not a good on-screen performance here, specifically with the acting. The action and stunts, of course, were fantastic. It's always cool to see vintage Star Wars items, such as a vehicle clearly influenced by the X-34 Landspeeder from the original 1977 film. Another cool design is the Imperial Troop Transport from another episode, apparently taken from the original line of toys from the original film, if I'm not mistaken, which actually never appeared on screen until The Mandalorian. This episode's main vehicle, the Trexler Marauder, clearly takes influence from that design. It seemed rather ridiculous that they were able to approach the front entrance of the base without any resistance. Also, when they finally reach Mando at the platform, he says,
"Empty base, huh?"
Nowhere was it ever declared that there was no one at the base. A skeleton crew was actually what was described. I love surprise endings in TV shows and movies, as well as plot twists midway through a story. The discovery that the base was actually a lab was brilliant. Definitely one of the reasons I love this episode. This episode's battle sequences is of course another example of only the good guys being able to hit their targets. All this is added by troopers conveniently crashing on speeder bikes when initially flying off to chase the group in the Trexler. Realistically, someone's back would have been injured in an impact of this force. But I found Karga and Mithril screaming in fear as a result of Dune's palading to be hysterical. Definitely a highlight of the show. Thanks again for watching the video. I will discuss with one of my partners the possibility of reviewing Dune Part 2 for a follow-up video. I'll post an announcement if that is determined. Take care and thanks for the support.